Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football. But today we have a special episode specifically talking about the Oklahoma Sooners, their loss last week to West Virginia, giving an outlook for Bedlam, and maybe giving in just a little bit of recruiting updates. And today I am joined by Jalen Ross. He is one of the authors of Sooner Sports Daily, and he's also launching a new podcast. So, Jalen, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your new podcast.
So you guys can find me mainly on Instagram at Sooner Sports Daily. We got 23,000 strong over there. Basically, the biggest place where you can find all the Oklahoma football news. I mean, we post everything that we can possibly think of. We like to keep people updated. And by we, it's me and my graphic designer, Blake. He helps out a ton. He's been a big backbone for me throughout the off season. And then on Twitter, underscore Jalen Ross. And then the podcast called The Blitz Period. It won't show up on platforms until Thursday because that's when the first episode will be out. But you'll be able to find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon. I mean, just about anywhere you get your podcast, it should be on there. SoundCloud, anywhere you can think of. And so you'll be able to find it. It'll be just quick weekly episodes talking Oklahoma football throughout the off season. We'll try to get some guests lined up. And, I mean, we've started it late, but better late than never. So,
Hey, you're getting into a good start, right? We're about to hit into early national signing day. Then you got
yeah.
national signing day. You got the transfer portal. Bowl season's about to hit. So perfect time to get in on that before next season hits.
Yep.
But I will go ahead and I will link all of those places down in the comments below so you guys can easily click and find his content. But I want to go ahead and get started with Oklahoma losing to West Virginia 23-20 last week, and pretty much a heartbreaker. They've never lost, in West Virginia before, and I don't believe West Virginia has beat us since that heartbreaking Fiesta Bowl, which I was there for. That one sucked a little bit. So,
Yeah.
what was your thoughts on this game? Because it honestly, outside of the Eric Gray 200-yard day, it didn't seem like there was a lot to take away from it on the good side.
Yeah. I tell you this. I think from a personal standpoint, I think the defense was a little bit better than it has been in this game. And that's not, it's not like West Virginia's going to blow you off the stat sheet offensively, but I thought the defense was a little bit better. I think, and I'm a lot calmer now because Sunday, I mean, I was heated with just the fact that, I mean, if any of you guys read what I put, if for those of you who follow me on Instagram, if you read the post, was kind of just like a long rant about players not really caring and things like that. But, I'll tell you this, I think, and it sucks for Eric Gray because that was the best game of his career that he played Saturday. And, typically when your running back runs for 200 yards by himself, you win the football game. But, defensively, I think, there's too many times where guys were in position to make plays and they just didn't. I mean, you talk about the Trey Morrison got caught on at one point in that second half. He could have made a play on the ball, didn't get his head around. Woody Washington had a similar mistake on one of the touchdowns that West Virginia scored, and it was a really good receiver that he was on, but still didn't make the play on that one. There's a point where, Garrett Green's running the ball right up the middle. Danny Stutzman's right there, has a chance to make a play. He doesn't. So too many times where guys were in position to make plays and they didn't. You had, and you could talk about the penalties. I mean, the CJ Colton penalty, obviously that was BS. And, it's come out since that the Big 12 said that they shouldn't have picked up the flag. And I mean, the way the game was going at that point, I don't know if OU takes that ball and they score. I have no idea, but it was an important point in the game. I think the biggest thing that killed Oklahoma was the mental mistakes. I mean, you talk about the Theo Weiss penalty on the Braden Willis touchdown. Marvin Mims dropped touchdown. That's 14 points altogether right there. And at that point, that pretty much that gives you a 34-20 win probably if you get those 2 points. I think this was kind of the one game where it's one for Brent Venables to learn from as far as decisions, because I mean I wasn't a big fan of and I don't think anybody was, but I wasn't a big fan of the decision to kick the field goal. I mean, horrible conditions for that special teams, and for Zach Schmidt to go out there. I can't remember how many yards the kick was, but not an ideal situation to be kicking with the game on the line. So didn't really agree with that call. But then again, Brent made a good point saying that they hadn't done well converting on fourth down all game. So, why trust him at that point? But um, I think offensively from this game, there was a lot of you got to wonder, like, how much does Jeff Lebby really trust Dylan Gabriel? Because you would obviously assume he trusts him to run his entire offense, but there was so much this Saturday that was like it's just swing pass after swing pass. They're not throwing the ball over the middle. I mean, it's just the simple offense that was being ran Saturday. They weren't. I mean, take Eric Gray out of that game, and they probably lose this game by way more because they couldn't get anything going through the air. Um, and I mean, obviously, it doesn't help when your receivers are dropping passes, but still, Dylan Gabriel did not have his best game Saturday. I mean, he was way too inconsistent. But I mean, you're lucky you got the ground game, and I think that's going to be another big deal this week because it's going to be cold. And Dylan Gabriel being a guy who, he's never really played in this kind of climate, so you're going to have to lean heavily on the ground game this week too. But I mean, I think the biggest thing that you've got to take away from this West Virginia game is just cutting out all the mental mistakes.
Yeah, no, there was so much that I think on the offensive side of the ball that they could really learn from. And again, I know people are really upset with the overthrows that we keep seeing from Dylan Gabriel and even the drops by Marvin Mims. And he had that one. And I get it. It's rainy. But to me, I don't know what it's like to be a football player playing in the rain, but I still find it inexcusable. You're wide open. It literally just falls through your hands, right? And that would have been a walk-in touchdown. And that would have been game-changing right there. I agree with you on the field goal. I don't understand why Brent Venables decided to kick that 46-yard field goal. I understand he's hit that before, but with those conditions, it just doesn't make sense. And, you're on a 4th and 3, and, your running back's hot that day, right? He's able to get pretty much whatever he wants when he wants it. So it didn't make sense to me on why you would not trust and lean on him a little bit more. And, quite frankly, it doesn't seem like, does it seem like to you that Jeff Lebby and BV trust the running back room this season? Because it seems like we're really rotating through two guys. We're not really seeing hardly anything from Sawchuk or Tawi Walker. And I thought those were two guys who would be easily getting in the rotation in some of these games.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, and I could definitely see it even with someone like Marcus Major, because he early on in the season he was getting a lot of burn, and I mean, I seem to remember at the beginning of the season we were having a discussion about whether Major or Eric Gray were which one was the true RB1 in this system, and then Major got banged up, missed a few games, came back and wasn't the same, and so. I could, and I mean, and even and Jeff Lebby said it last week before the game. I mean, he talked about, how important it was to have Javonte Barnes back, because with Eric Gray running the ball so much, you're going to need him to be fresh-legged in the fourth quarter, and you're definitely going to need that this week. But I could see them having trust issues with it because there's a lot of youth. I mean, you talk about Gavin Sawchuk, you talk about Javonte Barnes. Tawi Walker hasn't played at this level. He's played college ball, but he's been a JUCO guy. So. And so EG's the only guy in that room that's really been truly experienced. And I think that was even something they talked about before the season. I can't remember that well. But I mean, going into Saturday, you're going to be able to use that because I mean, it's actually crazy. This was a stat that BV pointed out last night, that EG is the first OU running back to reach 1,100 yards this fast in a season since Adrian Peterson did it his freshman year. So Eric Gray's playing exceptional football this year, and it's been kind of crazy to me because I didn't really expect it after the year he had last year. But I could see that as far as, I mean, you want a young guy like Barnes who, when it comes to running backs, you can't overwork them. And even a guy like Barnes, he doesn't want to be that guy that's getting 20 carries a game. But I mean, this Javonte has all the potential in the world to be the number one running back on this team next year if he makes it happen. But for him being such a young guy and having so much young blood in the room, I could definitely understand if they didn't have that trust developed quite yet.
Yeah, that's just one thing that I've noticed all season, and I've really kind of scratched my head was the running back room. It's like we have the depth. I just didn't understand really why we weren't seeing those guys on the field. As far as these overthrows to Dylan Gabriel, I know he's realistically probably the only option that we have at quarterback right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard in the rivalry game with Texas that General Booty might have had an eye issue, and that's why we didn't see him and why we continue to see Bevel. There's times this season where I'm like, why haven't we seen Evers? Because I understand Lebby has a really complicated offense, but I'm like, surely Lebby can dumb something down and run something more like what Lincoln Riley runs, where, hey, I'm going to tell you where to throw the ball and, have a successful game out of that.
Yeah.
So with Dylan Gabriel, I pointed this out a lot. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Dylan Gabriel was a 3-star quarterback coming out of high school, and he went to UCF playing under Lebby's system, throwing to probably guys that really weren't ranked in the composite, 3-star guys or low 4-star guys. He comes to Oklahoma after sitting out a year for a leg injury, and he has a better offensive line, only being sacked I think 9 times this season, 9 or 10 times. Where he's previously been sacked 22 times each season. Last season, he was sacked 9 times in 3 games. And then he has exponentially better wide receivers and talent at that position.
Yep.
And there's a part of me that goes, it's hard for me to blame Dylan Gabriel because I can't imagine what it's like transitioning from a school that has, exponentially less people in the stands than what Oklahoma has. But then 2, you've got this greater talent on the outside that you have to be able to feed and sync up with. At 3, you're having all the time in the world that you haven't had before. And I feel like all of those things, plus coming back from an injury, which he had to go out earlier this season and having to come back again, I just feel like all that stuff's playing against him, and Oklahoma fans are being too hard because they expect him to be a Baker or a Kyler or even a Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Landry Jones years, I think, were a little bit better than what we're seeing right now. What's your thoughts on the play of Dylan Gabriel? What are you seeing when you see him go out there every week?
Dylan's interesting because I, I say this, and really this is just the case for the entire program. I think that the fan base really needed to kind of dumb down their expectations before the year, because I know there were a lot of people that thought that Dylan was going to go out and light the world on fire and be a Heisman finalist and things like that, which is understandable because, I mean, you talk about him coming back with Jeff Lebby. They lit the scoreboard up at UCF, so I completely understand it. But to me, Dylan's ceiling was always good enough to get you to win the Big 12. Like, I think he's good enough to do that. Now, obviously, the way the season's gone, not no, but early on, I mean, the guy's never played with the kind of supporting cast he has now, as you mentioned. I mean, he has a better offensive line, better receivers. I mean, you get to come play with Marvin Mims, you get to come play with Theo Weiss and Jalil Farouk, and all this talent at wideout, but that all hasn't lived up to its full potential. And I think Dylan's a decent quarterback. I don't think he's awful. I don't think he's great. He's just kind of in between. I mean, I said this after the Iowa State game that he's an any given Saturday player. Like one night he'll light up the box score, the other he's just kind of there. And I mean, I got kind of called out for this earlier today. In fact, somebody was trying to get on to me for defending him, but I'm saying he's not at the top of the top 50 things wrong with this team this year. He's not at the top of that list. I mean, like I said, he hasn't been awful, but he hasn't been great. He's just been decent. He's good enough to win you games. I thought he played well enough to win that Kansas State game. I mean, defense was awful that night, so that didn't help. And then you have to think back to what this team is without him, because we saw what it was like when you went down to Dallas. I mean, goodness, you saw what it was like in the second half of the TCU game, and then you saw what it was like going down to Dallas against Texas, and this offense was non-existent without him back there. He came back the next week. They go out, they broke a record for the most total yardage they've ever had in a game. So I mean, the differences show when number 8 is back there running the offense, and I like him. I mean, again, I think too many people expected him to be this, just second coming of Christ quarterback, but you got to remember where the guy came from. I mean, this is a guy that came from a group of 5 team in UCF. They don't play the competition Oklahoma plays. They don't play on that same level. They don't play in the same type of stadiums. The atmosphere and all that stuff is different. Because I remember, like, going into the Nebraska game, there were people that were worried about him going into Lincoln and playing in front of that crowd and playing in front of that many people because he's never done it before. And so, I think we're a fan base that's gotten too used to quarterbacks just lighting up the scoreboard and being great enough to bail your sorry defense out. Like Kyler Murray was that guy. You had a defense that was awful, but you knew with number 1 back there at quarterback, you were going to score every time you touched the ball. Same case with Baker Mayfield, same with maybe a Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams. I mean, he wasn't great, but he was he flashed as a true freshman doing the things he did. But I mean, I had somebody tell me earlier that like Dylan was the worst starting quarterback we've had in the last 10, 15 years. I don't agree with that at all. I mean, I think that he's been just fine. He just obviously needs to be better here and there. And I think he has to have a big game this week because, you talk about the conditions you're going to be playing in. I mean, I think the high is supposed to be like 30-something degrees. This is a kid from Hawaii, started his college career in Florida. So he's never played in this kind of temperature. And he's going to have to go out there Friday against Saturday, go out there Saturday against a solid OSU defense, not the same as last year, but they're physical. They can get pressure. They can do all these things. And you have a very big shot to have a big game offensively. Just depends on what number 8 does. So, I mean, I like the guy. I think he's good. He'll be back next year, no doubt in my mind about that. And I'm pretty sure he'll run the show again next year. So, I think he's. Let's just end it by saying he's just decent.
Yeah, no, if you had to look at it and, you had to rate him in terms of a quarterback, he's probably 3.5 stars from what Oklahoma's had, right? Baker, Kyler, Jalen, Sam Bradford, 5-star guys, Landry Jones, I would say probably more of a 4-star guy, just in terms of what he was able to do here and what he did for so long. And Dylan Gabriel's right behind those guys. But I do think next season you're going to see a completely different Dylan Gabriel if he is the one that gets to start at quarterback. I say if because I do think Jackson Arnold is potentially going to have something to say about that spot at quarterback if he comes in and is as good as what we've seen him at Denton Guyer. I get there will be a transition coming to the college game, but Jackson Arnold is that dude, right? He is that guy or appears to be that guy from what we've seen in the past from other quarterbacks here at Oklahoma. So, but yeah, didn't have his best game against West Virginia, but that's okay because the best game is coming up against Oklahoma State. So let's kind of jump into a little bit of a Bedlam preview. Oklahoma loses this game last year, and it really started to seem like Lincoln threw in the towel in this game. I believe that, and I will go to my grave saying that. Oklahoma should have won this game, but Lincoln Riley threw in the towel, gave it to Mike Gundy and that staff because, listen, I feel like Caleb wanted to go win that game. And, when there were 2 pass interference calls that were not called at the end, Lincoln Riley's standing down there all calm. And I know people will say, well, the clock was ticking. I don't care. He can call a timeout. He can do something. So, I think this is big because this game, I think, can give Oklahoma fans a lot of hope here, even when your season's kind of been completely down the toilet. One, because you lost last season. You don't want to have to go through what we had to go through last season and all through this season to hear Oklahoma State fans say, we beat you. And, it gets you bowl eligible. It gets you that extra month of practice so that you can get those guys ready to go for next season. You can see what you have, right? You can put out the younger guys, the freshmen. You can let Marvin Mims and Anton Harrison and those guys, start to focus on their NFL careers and really start to figure out what next season's going to look like for you. I think Oklahoma's got a good shot in this game. I just think they have the better running game than Oklahoma State. I personally don't think Oklahoma State's defense is that good. I know they show glimpses, but I just think they're awful compared to what they were last season. They're giving up about 452 yards a game. Only 163 of those are through the ground. But Eric Gray has shown us that he can go out there and run pretty much on whoever he wants to. So I do think Oklahoma picks up the win. I actually think this one's probably a little bit more lopsided and probably one of Oklahoma's best victories of the season. I think you're just going to see the entire team put it together because there's guys on this team that they don't want to leave and not have beat Oklahoma State their last year because that's not who Oklahoma is. But then two, you're 5-5. You don't want Oklahoma State to be the reason why you don't go to a bowl game. And I know we still have Texas Tech at the end, but Oklahoma State will hang that over us for years. So I think this is probably more of a lopsided victory for Oklahoma. I think they probably come out and win this game 42 or 44 to probably 17. I don't think they allow Oklahoma State to get past the 20 mark. I think you're going to see the defense come out and play some inspired football. What's your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's easy to say that it's going to be miserable and the crowd won't show up and all this other stuff, but I think the complete opposite because, the thing about it was like, I remember after the Texas game, I thought that the Kansas game was going to be, just miserable. I mean, early game, you just got shut out the week before, and it was actually one of the better environments we had all year. So I think with this being Bedlam, with it being, you don't know how many more Bedlams you're going to get. So this very well could be the last one in Norman. And then, you're fighting for bowl eligibility. A good Oklahoma State team coming into town, night game, prime time, LED lights, all that stuff, last one, and then it's senior night. And for this group of seniors, you talk about a Braden Willis or a Justin Broyles or guys that have been here for a long time, have made a name for themselves, a Drake Stoops and anybody you can think of. It's going to mean a lot to them for this being their last one and the way that the season has gone. And even from this standpoint of defensively, Brent Venables has talked, and he talked about it last night on his radio show. He made a lot of points that I kind of made in the article that I put out on Sunday. He alluded to the fact that there are a lot of young guys on this team that kind of basically just act like they don't care. They show up, go through the motions and things like that, and they're trying to create leadership and all this other stuff. So he's got some passion. He's got something going into this week. It's like, this is the last one. You don't get very many opportunities. This is your last chance. And, BV's even challenged the fan base and said, hey, we need you guys to show up, make this the most, harassing and most suffocating environment that teams play in. You got the last one at home. And so with the Oklahoma State team coming in here, Spencer Sanders, he's been banged up. And I think to me, they got the win last year, but I don't think he played well in that game. I think he turned the ball over 3 times. I think he had 2 interceptions and a fumble or something along those lines. He didn't play that well in the Bedlam game last year. Oklahoma State won that game because they had a really good defense and Brendan Presley's kickoff return. That's what won them the game. The thing about Spencer Sanders, and he's incredibly inconsistent. And I think if you can rattle him, you get pressure on him, you've got to make the guy fold. I'm not saying purposely injure the guy, but make him tap out. You've got to be physical. You've got to be the ones to be the aggressors this week because they haven't done it. Again, your last one at home. Give your fans something to be happy about because, for one, this is a fan base that's been complaining and moaning the past couple of weeks about defense, and it's been all over Twitter, and even BV's talked about it in his press conferences about how he sees all the stuff that the fans are saying and the players see all that stuff. You've got some motivation going into this game. And then, of course, most importantly, it's a freaking rivalry. It's bragging rights. It's the in-state game. It means a lot to everybody in that stadium. Game's going to be packed. It is sold out. So it'll be a fun game to be a part of. The thing about it is it don't matter how good or bad Oklahoma is or how good or bad Oklahoma State is. The game's always close. And I mean, I do kind of agree with you, thinking it'll be lopsided, but at the same time, it's Bedlam. So you never know what's going to happen. Very well could end up being a blowout because the blowouts always happen when I least expect it. So and it would be awesome to end the home slate with a blowout. So I'm extremely confident, though. I mean, I feel like this is a game that they can win, even after all the crap they've gone through the last 3 weeks. But it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And you talked about senior night, and there's a lot of seniors on this team. There's an opportunity that we're possibly not going to see a lot of these guys again in an Oklahoma uniform. There's a lot of questions around if Woody Washington's going to go to the draft or if he's going to stay. There's a lot of experts out there that think he's probably leaning more to leave. But depending on how this season goes, right, Woody could decide to end up staying another year with BV. There's a lot of Sooners that they don't have the eligibility to stay next year. You talked about it, Braden Willis. There's Daniel Parker, Chris Murray, Robert Congold, Jeffrey Johnson, Deshaun White, Justin Broyles, Trey Morrison, Michael Turk, Casey Keller. CJ Colden is a 6-year senior, but he gets the medical hardship if he decides to want to stay, which I would assume he would. That would give him a 7th year. He'd be the first one in our program to be able to do that. Jaden Davis, one of the defensive backs. I think that one's a pretty solid that he's probably going to come back for his last year. He loves Oklahoma. He loves BV. So it really sounds like I know a lot of fans don't like Jaden Davis that much, but hey, listen, you know what? The man actually, I don't think is as bad as people make him out to be. I get it.
Yeah.
He's a little small, but I think he's actually pretty productive on the defensive side of the ball. You're hearing things. TD Roof, he isn't coming back. Ted Ruff confirmed that in his press conference yesterday. McCade Matauer, listen, he could come back just depending on what the production looks like for him in the next season. I as far as Drake Stoops goes, I expect him back. I think Drake is, if he stays another year, has a good outing next year with Dylan Gabriel, which I think he would be one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers in the lineup next year. He could potentially go in the first 5 rounds to somebody, right? Because one thing that I love about Drake Stoops is you can get him the ball and he'll get and he'll get you what you need. He'll get you those yards. He'll catch it wherever you put it. As far as Theo Weiss goes, I think Theo Weiss hits the portal. He was already on the fence about it last season, and man, it just sucks. Like he hasn't really panned out and been what we thought he'd be. And you're starting to hear rumblings about how, he's not really getting along with Lebby. And then you hear Jalen Redmond, I think he should come back, but man, the dude's got talent. It's just about that guy staying healthy.
Yeah.
And then you've got the 2, Anton Harrison and Marvin Mims. They're both gone. They're going to the draft. It would be stupid for them not to go. Marvin Mims can't really do anything else for himself coming back. Like NFL scouts know what that man can do. They know that he is really good. And him coming back, even putting up a 1,700, 2,000 yard year, I don't think would really help him that much, just because we know what he can do. Antoine Harrison, you're hearing he's probably one of the top 25 best players in this draft, right? So, and with what Bean Bo's been able to put out into the league, there's a lot of respect there for that. And so, and that kind of really questions the recruiting part of the offensive line, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But as far as this game goes this weekend, you're probably looking at about 35 degrees at kickoff is what I think they're saying. It's going to be cold, but it's your first true night game, right? When I say true night game, that means when it kicks off, it's going to be dark. You're going to be able to utilize the lights. And I think the fans are really going to feed off that energy. All y'all need to bundle up. I don't want to see anybody leaving the game early because it's cold. We all know those tickets cost a lot of money anyway. So if you don't want to be there, go ahead and give your tickets to somebody else who actually wants to go. But yeah, I just think, they're going to be able to feed off that. They're going to be able to feed off that it's senior night. And I think they're going to come out big winners in this game. And I think you're going to see this momentum build, having to go into Lubbock next week, play another night game, 6:30. It's going to be rowdy out there, but I do think the team will be able to rally around that and, have a good end to the season. And I think that's really what you want to see, right? You really just want to see them end strong. And you really want to see that improvement on the defensive side of the ball. And you really want to see the young guys play, which we really haven't seen too much of throughout this season. So,
Yeah, no doubt.
you talked a little bit about Bedlam, and so I wanted to add this one in here real quick. We don't talk about it for too long, but OU is going to the SEC. Looks like it's going to happen in 2025, probably no earlier. The playoff is expanding, probably the start of next year, which I'm excited for, to have 12 teams. And then you have this idea that Bedlam will never be played again. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I know they say it's our fault for going to the SEC, but I mean, they're the ones scheduling an FCS team on their schedule every year, right? They could
Yeah.
just remove that and put in Oklahoma, and it would be a huge boost to your schedule, especially with the 12-team playoff. Does it seem like to you Oklahoma State just does not want to play Oklahoma every single year?
I feel like it has to be because I don't know all the ins and outs of all the of how all that works, but I mean, I think if Clemson and South Carolina can have an annual rivalry, you know, Clemson's in the ACC, SC's in the SEC. If what's some other out of conference, right? If Miami and Florida State, oh no, they're in the same conference. Uh, just about any out of conference rivalry you can think of. Oh, Notre Dame and USC. I mean, Notre Dame's not in the
Yes.
conference, obviously, but there are some annual rivalries in college football of teams that aren't even in the same conference.
Yeah.
So if they can
Florida,
make it
Florida
work,
State is one of those.
that's what it was. It was Florida State, not
Yeah.
Miami. But if if these teams can do that, I see no reason why OU and OSU can't. Now, again, I don't know all the science behind it, and maybe they've talked about it and they can't. I don't know, but I think a while back Joe C commented on it, and basically what he said made it seem like he was pretty much saying if Oklahoma State wanted to play it, we would play it. So it kind of tells me that they don't. Uh, and I mean, even if it's not annual, at least schedule it. Maybe do a home and home or do something. I mean, I don't think you need to just do away with it completely. Now, whether that's just football, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure they'll play it in basketball and all these other sports, but as far as football, I feel like it probably has to be something that falls in the hands of OSU.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hearing, and that's kind of what I think. Again, they scheduled that one FCS opponent, that high school team, every single year. They could easily take that off, and it would bring a lot of revenue, I think, for both schools to be able to keep that game going in this rivalry, because it'd be a Big 12 versus SEC matchup, Oklahoma versus OSU. Every year that game would mean something because both teams are likely going to be at the top of their conferences. And with the playoffs expanding, if Oklahoma State, that's the only game you drop, hey, that looks really good on you because you played a tough out of conference opponent. And you're probably still going to win your conference. I expect Oklahoma State to be running this thing when Oklahoma leaves, right? Oklahoma State, you guys got big expectations here to be living up to what we have set the standard to be in the Big 12. So, want to jump into some recruiting updates. A lot of fans right now, they're just going berserk because OU's not landing the 5-star guys. It's maybe not as flashy as what people want. I think right now we're sitting at number 8 in the recruiting rankings, right behind Miami and Texas. Florida is closely gaining some ground on us, and I expect Florida to jump up through the rankings this week or in the coming weeks. I think Samuel Mpemba is probably going to end up committing there from just kind of what I'm hearing. But OU still got a lot of players on the board. Bedlam is a huge recruiting weekend. You're hearing about David Hicks potentially flipping. I have been a huge proponent to that. I don't think that this Texas A&M thing was really ever a true commitment. I thought it was more so just to get people off of his back for a while. You hear of Peyton Bowen potentially being a silent commitment. You still got the 2 edge rushers, Tahu Siliakana, Damian Sanford. And then you've got guys like David Peavy, who OU just recently offered. He's one of the USC edge rushers. Got Ashton Sanders. He's the 300-pound, 6'3" defensive line, 6'3" defensive lineman. Definitely could be a guy that we could put at the nose tackle position especially in this 3-man front that we like to run. Marcus Strong is a guy that I just think he's going to end up being a really big dog. And if he would have went to some of these camps, he definitely could be a little bit higher ranked than where he's at right now, currently not being ranked in the composite. And then you got Taylor Wine, another guy that it's kind of all of a sudden been blowing up after OU offered him. So is there anything that you're hearing on the recruiting trail? What's your thoughts on the Sooners recruiting class so far?
I would say that so far, I think one word for it is surprising, because I really didn't expect them to land all the guys they did. I mean, they got really hot in the summer, and I know there are people out there that think the class is just falling apart because of the uh, the results. But I'm one of those people that firmly believes recruits don't care about results, because for one, if recruits cared about results, you wouldn't see Texas and Texas A&M having these great classes year in and year out. I mean, these guys know that they can come in from day one and they can start. Like, I'm pretty sure that's been the conversation they've had with someone like a PJ Adebawore, who, there was a lot of smoke last week of him probably going to Ohio State. He kind of silently reaffirmed his commitment Sunday night, but a guy like Adebawore can come here and start next year. I thought Colton Vasek could have started next year, but I understand him not sticking with Oklahoma. That makes all the sense in the world, but he's a guy that I thought could have came in and made some noise from day one. I mean, if you manage to flip Peyton Bowen, I see no reason he couldn't come in here and make a chance and get back there with Billy Bowman. He's a playmaker. He's somebody that Oklahoma needs in the secondary. They haven't had a guy that can get back there and make plays in a long time. You talk about a David Hicks and his commitment. I honestly, I'll tell you this right now. I think he's going to end up signing with Oklahoma. Just because of the fact that, one, he will be at Bedlam, and then the A&M thing. Yeah, like you said, it was just like a quick decision. It was a panic thing. I mean, he was all but committed to Oklahoma that day, and literally told the coaching staff he was coming to Oklahoma, and then they were even blindsided by the fact that he chose to go to A&M. So, that's not going to stick. I have no doubt in my mind that it's not going to stick. I think if all goes well this weekend, you're going to flip that. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to roll out the red carpet for him. I am led to the belief that the whole Crimson and Cream NIL thing that came out yesterday kind of has something to do with him, because it's not a coincidence that it comes out 30 days, or not 30 days, but it comes out a month before early signing day. So that could have some implications into it if that really matters to Hicks. But I mean, the guy's the number one defensive lineman in the class. Like, he's a guy that very well could come in and take somebody's job from day one. But as far as it's going now, I mean, here's the deal. People can talk about not landing the 5 stars and all that, but to me, I mean, I'm one of those that's kind of in the middle when it comes to the whole conversation of if stars matter and stuff like this. Because, I mean, at Oklahoma, we're used to some 5-star guys not panning out. Like, that's not something new. And to me, when it comes to someone like Brent Venables, he doesn't care about all that. He just wants to know if you're a football player. Like, if you can go out there, you know the game, you're physical, you can do all these things well, he's going to recruit you. He's going to want you on your team. And so that's why a guy like a Taylor Wine, a 3-star guy, but after Oklahoma offered him, all the other offers start coming in. And before that, he only had offers from, small little MAC schools. I mean, a lot of teams weren't really in on him. You talk about an Ashton Sanders or a Marcus Strong, as you mentioned, a David Peavy. I mean, and he's committed to USC, but, you talk about all these different guys. They want football players, because I think Oklahoma's issue in the last couple of years has just been recruiting guys that are just athletes, guys they can move well, they got the speed, they got this and that. But then when it comes down, when it's time to get physical, when it's time to get in the trenches, you've got guys on your D line that, I mean, weigh 200 something. That's what's getting you whooped in the college football playoff when you go play the LSUs and the Georgias and the teams that they've had trouble with in the last couple of years, the Alabamas. I mean, those teams are recruiting tough, hard-nosed football players who are also athletes. So, I think that's the beauty of it too. I mean, getting into the late signing period, you find some gems. I mean, our Mason Thomas was one of those guys. Our Mason Thomas has been contributing to this team heavily this season, and he's a guy that Oklahoma didn't find until the late signing period in February. Grayson Halton's a guy that's contributed from day one. He's a guy that they also didn't sign until February. They found him after the early signing period. So you're going to find a lot of gems down the road. But it is fun to see how loaded this class is on the defensive side of the ball and the potential it has when you talk about David Hicks, Peyton Bowen, Taylor Wine, and all these other guys. It's going to be fun. But I'm really excited for those guys to come in because I truly want to see who's going to be that young guy that makes an impact from day one.
Yeah, and personally, I definitely like the 5-star guys. I know that's something that we can point to, so I'm totally going to leave those guys out of it. But I really like the 6'1", about 215-pound linebacker out of Crandall, Texas, Samuel Omosigho.
Yeah.
So he recently got a little bump in the 247 composite score rankings. He's now a top 100 player in the country, the number 8 overall linebacker in this class. And let me tell you, this dude's athletic. He can play both sides of the ball. He is very good at the skill position, at any of the skill positions. And I mean, just being able to, I think, be able to play both sides of the ball and be able to show how athletic that you can be playing 3 sports. I think this is a guy where, hey, if he comes in the off season, puts on probably another 15, 20 pounds with Smitty, he could be a guy that competes for that rotation in that linebacker room where, quite honestly, I think our depth is probably that's one of the spots where you need more depth going into this season, especially with the recent decommit from Caleb Sanders. You really want to see these guys and Ted Roof be able to come in and secure this linebacking room and make it a little bit stronger before the end of the season. I think Samuel Omosigho is one of those guys that'll be able to just come in and make an immediate impact on this team, and we're going to be able to see that. So I think this year he had 150 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 interception for a touchdown. So I really like what we've seen from him in his senior season. I think at one point he was hurt a little bit in there, so he definitely potentially could have had some higher stats than that. But when you look at what he's able to bring to the team and what Oklahoma is missing this season, man, like, what is there that this kid cannot do for us? And then, like I said, you look at the 5-star guys: Jackson Arnold, PJ Adebawore. PJ Adebawore is going to bring some well-needed depth and guys on that defensive line as one of the edge rushers. And then Jackson Arnold going to be able to come in and make the quarterback room be a little bit more competitive than maybe what it is now. Maybe give Dylan Gabriel a little bit of run for his money, even though I think we all expect Dylan Gabriel to be able to take that job next year and finish his career out. But then you got a guy like Derek LeBlanc, the 6'4", 265-pound defensive lineman. And one of the things that I like most about this kid is his leadership on the defensive side of the ball and the leadership role that he's taken to be able to help Jackson Arnold try to recruit guys to Oklahoma. You hear about his friendship with David Hicks and how, that's kind of gone a long way. And again, like you said, I fully expect David Hicks to end up a Sooner. I don't think he stays at Texas A&M. And I know he's taken an official visit to Oregon, but I don't think really that matters that much. I mean, the kid's just probably trying to squeeze out the last bit of his official visits before he decides to commit. So big recruiting weekend ahead for Oklahoma. There's a lot of big recruits, even for the 2024 class that are going to be here. So we will definitely have that video coming out on Friday, breaking that down. But Jalen, I appreciate you joining me today. I appreciate you hopping on and discussing a little bit about this Bedlam game. Tell everybody again where they can find you and a little bit more about your new podcast.
Yeah, so again, you guys can find me on Instagram at Sooner Sports Daily. You can tap in with the website, SoonerSportsDaily.com. It's not your typical website. There's not a lot of, like the guys that pump out content every 2 hours and stuff like that. It's just going to be like annual stuff if we have thoughts or, be it recruiting pieces or just opinions and different things like that. You guys can go subscribe. It's free. So you just subscribe to the website so you get an email every time we post something. You can find me on Twitter at _Jalen Ross and Facebook at Jalen Ross as well. You'll see it with the SSD logo that you see on the screen. It has the same logo, so you know it's me. And then the new podcast, excuse me, will be the Blitz Period with Jalen Ross. You'll be able to find it on all podcasting platforms. You should be able to find it Thursday because that's when the first episode will be out. We're actually recording tomorrow, so you'll be able to find it at that point. You guys can go download it, leave a rating when the episode comes out. Let us know your thoughts. Feedback is always appreciated on everything. I mean, feedback on the Instagram, feedback on Twitter, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate it, man. And listen, I will definitely be tuning in. I will drop all of the links for Sooners Sports Daily and his new podcast as well. So y'all tune in for that. But hey, until next time, we will see you guys Friday, and Boomer.
Sooner.